Well, hello and welcome. You are watching Property Question Time with me, Keith Maynard. This is the programme where you get to ask your property-related questions to our guests who just happen to be experts in their chosen property field. Joining me on today's programme, we have Stefano Lucatello, the Senior Partner of Cobbold Law, Nicole Bremner, the founder of Ep68, and Neil Cobbold, the COO of PayProp Limited. Well, thank you very much for joining us. You know the format by now. I'm going to ask you all some questions and we'd like you to share your knowledge with us, please, throughout the programme. So I'm going to go ladies first, as always. Son of a vicar, I'm always tempted to do that. So Nicole, we're going to start with you. Great question this. My son has just given me £35,000 via his granddad. He's just started university now and has a student loan of £9,250 and a maintenance loan of approximately £3,000. I can't find any savings accounts or ISAs that pay a decent amount. The student loan is at 6% currently. It seems a shame to use the money to pay the student fees. He's studying engineering, and if it all goes well, he should become a high earner at some point. Should he pay off the fees and have less debt? Should he invest in an ISA or a LISA, or do something else?
That's a really interesting question, and it's very difficult to know without getting a really full picture of your son's financial situation. It could be an idea to pay down the student loan. However, it seems that he is investing for a very long period of time. So perhaps it's worth looking at some share investments. It's quite a large amount of money, so perhaps if he's got more than a 5-year time frame, he could look to invest in some stocks and shares type investment. The other option, of course, if you are looking at property, is perhaps to look at purchasing a property where he's at university, perhaps using that $35,000 as a deposit, going in with another couple of students, with their parents perhaps, and looking to buy their own flat near the university. That could be a very interesting way of living right near the university, investing into property, and also investing for the long term.
Making the money kind of do its own work.
That's right, work for them, yeah, and then saving the money on the student accommodation while they are at university.
Any other thoughts on that, chaps?
Well, he's taking the right view. 6% on the student loan. There is a lot within property investment where he could be looking at higher yields. It's a bit of a minefield looking at future long term. So I think it's right. He just needs to look and have a view of what he wants. It's fine saying I've got this money and it's paying off the student loan and it going forward. That's quite a short-term view. As Nicole said, if he's looking longer term, he needs to take more of a view of what the money can do for him over that period rather than just a short outlay for a student loan.
Thank you very much indeed, Neil, and thank you to you, Nicole. Now, Stefano, we're going to start with you. We're planning to build a double garage and we're struggling through, and I should preface this first, this is a question that's come from France. I know this is within your remit. And we've translated the French, fortunately. So we're planning to build a double garage and are struggling through the request for permission to build form. It's a lot more complex than the Déclaration Travaux, which we submitted previously for a small shed. We've had a search and not much luck finding a guide to completing this form. Is there any advice on how to complete it, please? And again, we're chatting now in reference to France.
Well, the first thing I'd say to you, Keith, is this, that our friends should seek the assistance and the friendship of the mairie and the mayor, the local mayor. He or she is the most important person in the planning sphere for that couple. So they ought to speak to her or him and seek guidance from him or her. It's very often the case that these people will actually sit down with the form and they'll fill it in for you whilst you're there and then. So that's one good thing. The second thing is that you can take on the assistance of a professional, like we would here a planning officer or a planning expert. That he's called an expert géomètre, and he is an expert surveyor, and he will help you through the planning rigours. And the way through it is very, very easy. You pay him a fee, he will guide you through it, he will ask you all the questions that are pertinent to your building project, and then you can go forward and move on like that. But certainly, if you're having problems, do not do it yourself. It's often the case that English people go abroad, they don't learn the language, they don't learn the technical terms like we have here in England, and it's important that you take on board an expert. That's all I can say.
So expert help,
yes,
or befriend the local mayor or mayoress?
Both.
Both. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Right, well, if I ever move to France, I'm sorted now, so much appreciated there, Stefano. Neil, welcome back. Question for you here, and it's quite a short one, really. My landlord very kindly went to a letting agency today and told them to serve us a 2-month notice period. We really like the area we live in and the apartment block, and luckily there is a flat with our agent that went up for rent this month. Our agent said the landlord will not let us leave earlier. Do we have any ground to stand on, any negotiation, any opportunity to fight this?
Okay, well, firstly, the 2-month notice period is the landlord's. That's not the tenant's. The tenant is bound by whatever is in the tenancy agreement, but also there's a remit that it's by the means that they pay. So if you're a weekly payer, you're deemed to be on a week's notice. If you're a monthly payer, you're deemed to be on a month's notice. There is a lot of the tenancy agreements that state that is down to the date that you pay. So even if you give a notice period today, but your payment is the 1st, it's deemed that you give the notice on your next actual payment day for a full term. But it should mean that actually if they go through the process and actually hand their own notice in, they won't be held to the full 2-month notice. With anything, with a negotiation, at this point of severance, it all comes down to what they're willing to do with the landlord. I would say that if the landlord has actually served notice for the 2 months, I would go back with your reasoning and actually the way that you see the exit going, but also, irrespective a little bit of the agent, put a letter outlining your situation and put it through. The landlord may be the owner of property, is a human being though at the end of the day. And if you are looking to move and there is it, and you being a family and actually going through, for a week or so of a move and to get out of what is your legal right, you'll find that most people can be accommodating. But until you broach it, the landlord's doing what is his legal duty and he has had no knowledge of what's happening behind the scenes. So make him aware of actually what's going on. You're not bound by the 2 months. That is the landlord's requirement, not yours.
Okay, so transparency and honesty and the personal touch.
Yeah. And remember, the landlord, he's doing his legal requirements. He doesn't realise the impact necessarily of what that's having to you. He's going through what he has to do for his investment and the property. And it's not really an emotional judgment. It's an emotional for the family that's got to move and find somewhere else. So just make them aware of what you're actually going through.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Neil, thank you. Staying with you, Neil, because we were chatting before we started about ASTs, and there's apparently some potential changes in the pipeline. Things have been happening up in Scotland. Could you share a little bit more?
So I mean, it runs on from this one with it saying, because handing the 2 months notice in is regarding an AST, and Scotland recently changed and no longer has those. It has private residential tenancies.
Could you just explain what an AST is as well, just to be really clear?
It's an assured short hold tenancy, and it's what we deem to be a legal tenancy now within the UK. Well, not Scotland now, but within England and Wales. And there are outlines of what must make a part of that document, but also the method that it can be terminated. It's quite a stringent rule process for how to terminate it. Scotland has changed to private residential tenancies, which are deemed to be more long-term. And because of that, they also protect the tenant even more of the reasons why a tenancy can be removed. It's going to change the way that the relationship goes between the tenant and the landlord. It's going to be seen more as a home and a long-term choice that somebody makes to rent under a private residential tenancy. And at the UK, we are currently under pressure to look at more long-term solutions and also to look at what's happening with our rented economy. And so often above the border, it seems a little microcosm. There's only 1,700 estate agents. There's 5 million people living there. It's easier to enact those changes before we look elsewhere. So I would definitely keep an eye on what's happening if you're an agent or a landlord or looking to get into property, because this could be a view of what's happening in the relationship between landlords and tenants. And I think it's a great time.
Is this, in a sense, something that is good for the tenant and not so good for the landlord, or are there mutual benefits?
There are mutual benefits in both. I think that are there going to be things that people will pick on and will actually always try and pull apart the negatives of a change? It's because we don't like change. But ultimately, the government is putting this in to protect both parties, to make it more and to recognise that actually renting is now a decision that people make, that it's going to be a lifelong choice, not a stopgap to get onto the property ladder. For some people, this is their sole decision. So they want people to be more informed and have more choice. but also the landlord to know that he's protected during that process. So there are benefits to both parties, but you really need to go in eyes wide open and see those, not this is what I've always done, this is how I always want to do it. And we are seeing a little of that with changes.
Is this bringing us, final question, is this bringing us more in line with our European partners and friends?
In some ways...
I am saying that with Brexit on the horizon, they're still friends.
Yeah, they are in some ways. In some ways we are taking our own tack on it. And as was always with the UK, we look at actually not only what we can take, but what we can improve. And I think with the private residential tenancies, there are a lot of improvements. Will this be the final article? Nobody knows. But it's certainly something to keep our eyes on to see how it develops the property market.
Thank you very much, Neil. Well, we're going to take a short break, but stay watching because coming up in just a few moments' time, more of your questions answered here on Property Question Time. Welcome back. You're watching Property Question Time with me, Keith Maynard, and I'm joined on the panel today by Stefano Lucatello, by Nicole Bremner, and by Neil Cobbold. Thank you very much for joining us. Right, we're going to go with a lovely question with you, Stefano, and this is all to do with garages and conversions and granny annexes. Right up my street, this. I want to convert my garages into a granny annex. Unfortunately, our home is a Grade 2 listed building and the garages are an old outbuilding and they're going to be classed as being within the curtails of the property. Can anyone advise me if I can separate the land that the garages are on from the land that the house is on, so that this wasn't raised as an objection from the council? Also, if this can be done, would I need to inform the mortgage company of my intention?
Wow. Yes. The answer to the question is you cannot just go and separate a piece of land into two.
Right.
Because the authority, the governing body that deals with Grade 1 to listed buildings will not allow you to do that. There is a register and you can search what exactly is protected. So if you go to the register, you can see exactly what the wording is. It may be that the description of the protected area is the land and the house, or it could be the whole of the curtilage of the land, or it could be that the garages are not included in the description. So the first port of call is to actually go and see the register, and you can then decide what to do. Having decided whether it is or it isn't, then you either do need permission or you don't need permission. But in any case, if you've got a mortgage on the property, my advice as a lawyer would be you should inform the mortgagee of any intended change of ownership or the fact that the mortgaged area has now been reduced. Because it may very well be that the mortgagee may say, no, I'm not happy to grant you permission to separate the land into two. So the initial thing to do is not to do any works, not to separate by going to a solicitor and asking for the separation of the title by way of transfer, but to seek information first, do your due diligence, do your investigation work, and then take it from there. I think actually the organisation is called Historic England.
Yeah, I believe so.
Historic
You
England.
can just look it
Historic
up
England,
and see
that's
the
right.
register.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting looking at that register, having renovated some Grade 2 listed properties before, because you'll see these grand properties, but what's actually listed as protected is perhaps a staircase, or perhaps it's just a part of the front, the facade. So when you think of a Grade 2 listed building, you think the whole building and everything in it is listed, but often it's just specific parts of that.
So when you're developing, you can develop the other parts, but as long as you keep that intact. Is that the essential?
Yes, you still need to have special permission from a listed building, a planning consultant within the council to do any works to that. Even repairing windows, for example, you will need specialist planning approval. But it just means that those particular features are not protected. It's only the ones that are listed on the database.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you both very much indeed. Right, we're going to go to you next, Neil. And you always seem to get the really short questions, don't you?
That's all right. I don't mind.
Here we go. We are new owners of a ground floor masonette with a garden. We're planning to replace the existing rundown shabby patio slabs and build some decking instead. Do we need planning permission to do that? Do we need to inform the landlord about our plans? What consequences would we have if we don't get planning permission or we don't contact the landlord?
Okay, well, firstly, if it was planning permission required, they're not the people to go and get it. Because if there is a landlord, it's the beneficial owner of the property that needs to go and make the application. They definitely need to inform, and they need to look at their tenancy agreement, but it is going to say that they are not allowed to make changes to the structure of the property without their landlord's consent. As to it needing planning permission, that won't be the case, because the patio, it's just replacing an existing, and actually decking is a permitted development so long as it's less than 30 centimetres in height off the ground. Then you don't need any kind of planning. But the landlord, while he will probably say yes, because you are actually improving his property and adding value to it, you definitely want to go through and get it, because if he doesn't like what's done to the property and you haven't got approval, one of the consequences could be that your cost to put that back. Obviously not to broken paving slabs, but to remove anything that's actually changed the footprint outside of the property. And he could use your deposit to do that, or put a call on you that you've actually breached the tenancy by not getting his approval first.
Okay, so obviously go through the landlord as your first port of call. I suppose this opens up the whole question though of, and I think this is becoming more common, isn't it? People actually seeing rental accommodation as a longer term option. We were talking about it before, we were talking before the break about ASTs.
Yeah.
And therefore the fact that people are going to want to make changes.
Yeah.
Is it financially worth them doing that, or is it just purely that, you know, it's just that cosmetic change which they feel they need to live with?
Well, they're going to spend a lot of time there, and actually, even when renting, the amount that they're actually going to pay for that accommodation is going to be their biggest outlay. If you're not going to use a part of that, then a lot of people can say, well, I'm actually going to be here for 3 to 5 years. Then making this small outlay at the moment actually improves my
Quality of life
for my whole period being there. That actually, yes, I'm not getting all of the benefit of this, but I'm going to get enough of the benefit over the period that if this was my property, I would still make the same adjustment. What you can actually do is speak to the landlord and see if he's willing to let you offset some of the cost. So actually, I'm not expecting you to pay for it, but you are getting a bit of a beneficial interest here. So can I get a month's free rent to go towards the cost of doing that? And that is not uncommon for people to have those negotiations regarding developments where the landlord is getting some kind of beneficial interest by them making the changes.
I think that there needs to be a mind shift for landlords towards space as a service. What you are doing is you're providing a service to your tenants who are your clients, and so you need to service those. And if you have really good tenants in place and you want to keep them there, and they're 4, 5, 6, 7 year tenants, you want them to be as comfortable in that place as possible. And if they want to put pictures up in the walls, really, does it matter? It doesn't cost much to cover up holes at the end. If they want a new bathroom because this one's, the old one's not fit for purpose anymore, just put a new bathroom in, because the cost of replacing that really good tenant with a new tenant is far outweighs any of the cost of keeping that particular tenant happy. So I really do think that landlords need to think more of this service that they're providing, and not just, this is your place, this is where you rent, and this is the rent you have to pay me every month.
Yeah. And I suppose long term as well, you'd hope that landlords would make decisions if something really needed work, like a new bathroom, and it needed doing, and they were a good tenant, then they would take it upon themselves to do that work
be
anyway.
Proactive.
And be proactive about it, yeah. Great, okay, lovely. Nice question, that kind of opened up a lot of good conversation. Nicole, this is an interesting one actually. It made us all giggle when this one came through. Hello, I was enjoying your programme, Property Question Time, on the 27th of November. I noticed the lovely mural in the background. I think we're talking there about the wallpaper. Please can you tell me where I can find it or its name? Well, Natalie, I believe that Nicole here has done a little bit of research.
I have indeed. I love your question, Natalie. Thank you very much. We asked the studio to give us the information, and they have kindly provided us with the information, so we'll get that up so you can read it. But it is actually called Timorous Beasties, A Bird in the Bush, and it's by Textura. So we will get that information so that you can see it. But yeah, it is a lovely wallpaper and feature, and we will make sure that you can see where that is available, so you too can purchase this lovely wallpaper.
Yeah, and get back in touch and tell us where you're intending to place this wallpaper. Is it a completely redo of the whole house? Is it a particular room? You know, I can imagine this in a. It's going to sound a bit wrong, but for me, I can imagine this in a downstairs toilet.
That's a large toilet.
Yeah, possibly, but I'd like to look at that, very colourful bird. If it could keep my attention, I think it would. There we go. Probably too much information. So, talking of wallpaper, I believe that you have a golden nugget that is wallpaper orientated that you wanted to share with us.
It is, and that is about using wallpaper when you are renovating or developing. And wallpaper, as you said, it can hold interest and it adds something special to a space. And so in this studio where we are now, behind us we have this mural, this wallpaper, and then we have some plain walls. And having this feature wall is a really nice way of lifting and adding something to a room. Wallpaper can be expensive though. Let's face it, it's more expensive than paint. So if you are under a budget, it's best just to do a small part of the wall, as they have here in the studio. You could do one whole wall, perhaps a small one. What often people do is where you've got a fireplace, the chimney breast, you can either have just the chimney breast wallpapered and the other walls painted, or the opposite, you can have wallpaper down where the sides of the chimney breast, and then have the chimney breast
Exposed brick.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it works beautifully. Wallpaper. Even in my own home, I have wallpaper underneath stairs, so you can just see this lovely wallpaper as you go up the stairs, and that works really well. So yeah, think about wallpaper. I think it goes in and out of fashion, but it can be used to really enhance a room.
Great information. Thank you very much, Nicole. And thank you to each and every one of you for your contributions on today's Property Question Time. More from us very, very soon. Of course, if you want to send in your own question regards your future desires, something, maybe an issue that you're struggling with, or just something that you're really interested in, i.e. the wallpaper that we have here in the studio, then you can contact us on property-tv.co.uk, or of course go onto our website and follow the information there. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you again soon.